Welcome to the Podcast Editors Mastermind, the original podcast. I think there is more now, but the original podcast dedicated to the business side of podcast editing. And tonight we have a very special show for you, something that I don't think we've done before. So we're really excited about this. But before we get into it, a little introduction to who we are. I am Daniel Abendroth. You can find me at rothamedia.audio. My co-host tonight
is Jennifer Longworth of Bourbon Barrel Podcasting, and I tend to always freeze now during the little intro, and I get very confused. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Unfortunately, not joining us tonight is Brian Ensminger. He had to do some parenting thing, like be there for his kid's band thing. I don't know. Yeah, you think this would be priority, but alas.
Oh, well.
You can find him at toptieraudio.com and our delightful long distance Yeti, Carrie Eric. You can find her at carrie.land. And tonight we have a very special guest who, if you are familiar with the show and have listened to it for any amount of time or seen the stream, you would recognize probably our most consistent viewer. I would say it's almost always, it's weird whenever you don't show up. But tonight we have none other than Patrick Keller. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself? I know you've recently had kind of a big life update. So why don't you tell us a little about who you are?
Yeah, I am a retired music teacher, public school music teacher. And I'm it's a little unusual. I'm a little younger than the average retired music teacher or teacher in general. But I had the opportunity and the ability to purchase some years toward retirement and put the math together and figured out that we could make it work and have a supportive husband. And so I bought 4 years, if I didn't already say that. And so I started looking into, editing my own podcast has always kind of been my jam, and the background behind the scenes stuff. And so I began looking for, and I honestly don't remember how I found you. I don't know if it was a Steve Stewart recommendation, but I found your show. I'm going to guess like a year and a half ago around then. And not long after you started, I guess. And
Been 4 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then it wasn't that long ago.
Okay.
It was a couple of years ago.
It's been a bit.
Yeah. Because I binged a whole bunch. That's why I feel like I've been there the whole time.
Yeah.
And so I totally loved it. I nerded out. I felt like even before I caught up with watching live shows, I felt like I knew you all and just love learning. I love some of the early shows. I love a lot of your earlier shows where you all really got into a lot of the nuts and bolts stuff on how you did things and what your processes were. Those are my favorites. So hint, hint, you should have some more of those. I absolutely loved those. But anyway.
Well, my process has totally changed in the last 3 months, so I could probably do another one of those shows.
Yeah. I feel like I'm pretty Yeah, definitely. Okay, I made a note to address that in an upcoming episode.
Awesome. Yeah, well, then I began thinking about whether I wanted to kind of start my own business, editing business, and assumed that's probably what I would do. And I guess that could still be in my future. But I ended up interviewing for a contractor position for a nonprofit education association, a fairly large organization, and got that. And so, and that position has kind of grown. And so it's just the perfect amount of work for me. I produce and edit 2 shows on average a week, as well as like the behind the scenes kind of recording it live. One of them is a live show. The other's a pre-recorded show. One of them uses StreamYard, just like we are now. And the other, we're on Riverside. And I work with a team, which is cool experience. And so this has been, and that started this last summer. And so it's been my first experience of having a lot of the volume of editing things that aren't my own podcast. And I'm loving it. I absolutely love it. Like a lot of podcasters, probably we think oh, sure, I know everything. No, I know everything there is to know about editing. And then all of a sudden you get a job like this and like, just kidding. I have lots to learn still. And I've learned from mistakes. And, as a teacher, you work in teams and things in education, but it's a lot different than like the kind of corporate nonprofit environment. And so that's been an interesting learning experience, and it's been really fun, and it's the perfect amount of work for me.
Nice.
And allowing me to still do my own podcast, which I do about every 2 weeks. So that's that.
Awesome. Well, I didn't actually specify what makes tonight special. So instead of like having an expert on or somebody on to talk about a specific topic, we wanted to bring on just like members of the community or other podcast editors and just kind of talk about. So I guess we call it like community highlight. We're just highlighting other editors.
I'm the community.
Space. Yeah. So that's what tonight's all about. And we're really excited to have Patrick on, in case you couldn't tell already. So why don't we start by telling us like what got you into podcasting in general?
So my husband introduced me to podcasts in around 2008. And so for a couple of years, I had like 2 podcasts that I listened to, and that was it. But I listened
Do you remember
to
what
them.
those were?
Yes. The Paranormal Podcast by Jim Harold. And probably it was really just his for at least a year or so. And I would, religiously watch the calendar and the time and wait for him to, upload the podcast. And, at that time I was sticking my iPod on the computer and, loading it in iTunes and all that. I don't even remember how all that worked, but I remember it was a lot more work than it is now.
Yep.
And so I was a huge fan of just 1 to 2 shows and was very devoted to those shows. And it was partly his inspiration in talking to him. At the time, he had a little podcasting course. It was short-lived. He didn't have it for very long. But I think I was his one and only graduate of his podcasting course. And that was in like 2013, I think. And 2014, I started my show. And since then have been obsessively passionate about podcasting in general and geeky about all the podcasts about podcasting podcasts. And, I use Overcast. My Overcast has so many podcasts in it now that it's ridiculous, and I don't very often empty out my player. And I go in and out of phases and now that I'm doing more work like this, the more you edit a podcast, the less time you have to listen to podcasts.
You figured it out.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm way behind. But that was my, the paranormal and nerdy. I had a paranormal investigation team for a couple of years. Got very into, paranormal research and tons of reading, and still do a little bit of that from time to time. And of course, that's what we nerd out about and chat about in my podcast, the Big Seance Podcast.
I was just going to ask you to tell us about your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So we cover, the paranormal gets super nerdy and is a huge umbrella of a lot of nerdy, geeky things. We don't typically go down the Bigfoot road or the aliens and UFOs and there's lots of things in paranormal if you think of Coast to Coast, AM like that. But we pretty much stay focused on spirit communication. I know I probably get a lot of eye rolls now or giggles. psychic mediums, paranormal investigation, ghosts in general, that kind of thing. I could talk about those, the afterlife, what happens when we die, that kind of thing. And I can, chat about those topics for hours and hours and hours.
Have you done, was it the Limp Mansion in St. Louis?
Yes, I have stayed there probably 3 times. And one of the times I stayed there, I was pretty much by myself, like literally by myself, no husband, just me. There was one other couple that stayed there, but I never saw them. They were on another floor, and that almost made it creepier that I knew that there was someone else there, but I never saw them. So like walking around, like not knowing who you were going to bump into or what they were doing was almost creepier. But yes, I have.
So I
stayed
presume
there.
this is some sort of local that you two know about that I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, sorry to get a little too
Location.
local.
This is the Lemp Mansion, the famous kind of tragic Lemp family, millionaires from the early 1900s, beer barons, and, lots of death and suicides in this one mansion, but it's very cool and spooky.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So getting into
All the podcast editors are like, "Get me out of this show. What are we listening to? What is this?"
came here to learn about podcast editing, not about haunted mansions.
Spooky stuff.
All right. So what DAW do you use to edit?
I use Adobe Audition
Yay.
and love it. I'm sure I don't get close to the capabilities that are there for me to use, but I feel like every now and then I will discover something and be like, "Oh, cool! Wish I would have known that." But I use Adobe Audition and Isotope RX10. Since I've started my current position, I've been using it a lot more as the standalone editor. I learned from Carrie, took her RX course, and it took a lot of practice and experimenting. And so, I do most of my processing. Sometimes I'll spend, depending on how big the show is or how many guests, I'll spend 40 minutes to an hour just in RX10, making it sound good before I put it into Audition. Before that, I used to use a ton of plugins, that would slow down Audition. And so that's what inspired me to use RX as a standalone. And it's so much better, I feel now, but it took practice. I couldn't just open it up and start using it. I remember sending Carrie a few of my tests when I first started using it, and she'd be like, "Oh, honey, let's try that again, okay? Try that again, shall we?"
Oh, that's so great.
Brian is catching this from the comments tonight, so maybe we will hear some from Brian. Hey, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
Welcome in. And if you're listening to the recording of this or to watching the video later on, and you want to be part of the live stream, just like Brian is tonight, and the great thing about this is being able to like interact and ask your own questions and just have like a little community kind of group feel. And if that's something you're interested in, then we live stream this pretty much every other Thursday at 8:05 p.m. Central Time. And you can just check out our Facebook page, group, or YouTube channel.
But sad news, Daniel.
Uh-oh.
Facebook is shaking things up, and you're going to have to find us on the YouTube stream. I think YouTube will still stream us live, but Facebook
Here's
won't.
hoping. Okay, so check us out on YouTube. Just do a
Find us
search for
on
Podcast Editors Mastermind. And we'll put a link to our YouTube channel in the show notes, as always, that you can find at podcasteditorsmastermind.com. All right, so Patrick, I guess this seems kind of, I think we kind of talked about it a little bit. Your switch from editing your own show to editing for somebody else. Tell us like how that came to be and like what how that experience has been.
This has been probably the biggest part of what I have learned, and the majority of what I've been learning is when I edit my own show. I have always been pretty obsessive and detailed, and I'm, not diagnosed, but pretty obsessive compulsive about things. And I was always known to spend 10, 12 hours editing a podcast, just an interview, and, but also putting little bells and whistles and segments. And I'm really nerdy about intros and creating a story in my intros and outros. And so, I just love doing it. And so I would spend way too long, but it wasn't work. It was my hobby. It's, was love doing it. And so I went into this job knowing that they're not going to want me to spend 15 hours on an interview podcast. So I knew that was going to be my first big challenge, to speed up that process and pick my battles, but learn how to do the most important things quickly. And so that has been the biggest challenge. And I'm getting a little quicker. I feel like in a way I'm getting better, not sitting there and stewing on certain things. But I am pretty picky. And you guys know there's kind of a science to it, what you leave, what you
Right.
modify, what crosstalk you separate, what interjections you just say, do I need the host to say 72 times, in an interview? Can I leave a couple of them and get rid of a couple of them? That kind of thing.
That's a trigger for me.
Yeah.
It's like the constant
Yeah.
Especially when they do like a single track recording and I can't do anything about it.
And I tend to, like when I do my own show, like sometimes I get in this rut of, not really a rut because I like doing it, but like sometimes every little minute cut, I'll be like, okay, now I have to duck it and fade it and and move it and shift it. And it's like, get over yourself. Just cut it,
Just cut it.
Yeah. Just cut. Make sure you don't hear a pop, but cut it and, duck it a little bit and move on.
Do you ever ask your husband to listen to it to see if he notices it?
I think probably in my own show years ago, I did that a lot, but I used to be, okay, don't laugh, but you guys may have done this too. I used to do a car test every podcast episode that I produced.
Oh.
So after I actually would do it before I published it. So like in Libsyn, I would schedule it so the file was there. And then I would jump in my car and I would drive around and at least listen to half the show and figure out what it sounded like in a car, because it's different than headphones. Yeah. And in those days, before I was using Audition and learning about how to do normalization better and, maximize volume and all of that, I would very often hear something and be like, ugh, and then come back up to the computer and re-edit and re-export and, balance the music with the, that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm sure I did have, to answer your question, I'm sure I did have my husband do that. I do too many nerdy things like that now. He'd be like, I don't have time. I'm working.
Usually
he does
when I do
help
that,
me out though with graphics and things.
Oh,
He's
nice.
like a good marketing advertising person, and so all my graphics for my own show, he's very supportive of that kind of thing. But I don't think he listens to too many of my shows. That's not his jam.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, so many times like I'll be struggling with this edit, like I'm trying to make it sound natural, like I can hear it, But like, and then I call my wife and I'll play it for her over and over again. And she's like, I do not hear what you're like. Stop. We can just move on. This is ridiculous.
And does it ever bug you all? I'm sure you guys have talked about this, and I'm sure I'm forgetting. But you work so hard and are so passionate about, even with this company that I'm editing for, I want them to be like, oh, wow, I noticed the 6 hours of blah, blah, blah that you put. But it's supposed to be so smooth that you don't know, right?
You don't know we were there.
And so when somebody says, oh, yeah, great work, that was good, I'm like, but where's the paragraph of acknowledgement?
I'll say it's bittersweet that like my best work, you'll never notice it.
Right.
Because like there'll be times like I'll take like a client will mess up and have like 3 different versions of like the same word, and I'll like take a bit of each word and like piece it together into like this smooth thing.
Yeah.
But it's like nobody is ever gonna know I did that.
No.
In the back of my mind, I'm always like, I really should do a comparison and put that out with that just so everybody knows
Hey,
exactly
FYI.
how much of a god I was in this episode. That I
Yes, we should do that. I have thought about doing like Mike Wilkerson. He does like his Elmero roll or whatever. But just like there's one client who makes like really funny noises whenever she messes up, and I want to just make like a super cut of her just going like blah, yeah, every time she messes up.
That's fun. So I was just going to ask how you found this mega client.
I found this fabulous company actually through the Editors Mastermind group.
Oh,
I think.
nice.
And I think it was Brian, I think, who actually connected me or reached out. So yeah, I didn't even
Because
think,
that's
I
the
didn't
number
even-
one question.
I didn't even think to mention that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to know how you find your clients. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
nice.
Oh, and then just a quick note. Brian gave us some clarification. We'll still be streaming to our Facebook page. We just can't stream to the Facebook group.
Oh.
So if you're watching this in the group, then you'll have to make sure to like our page or subscribe to us on YouTube if you want to continue catching us live.
That's a relief. Because that made me nervous when you all said that. Because
Yeah, me too.
I was like,
Like,
what?
why would they do that? Even still, like, I don't understand why you can't stream to the group, but I've long since given up on trying to understand the logic behind the decisions that Facebook makes.
Or any social media for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
Brian is chiming in. He says, it's all about knowing me to find your clients. I can't find my own clients, but I can probably find yours. So
Well, Brian, if you want to send some my way.
This particular client would not have been for everyone. I remember looking at the company's wishes and kind of the requirements of the, like I said, fast turnaround, and it hasn't ended up being. They wanted really fast turnaround. It hasn't been as fast as I thought it would be. So I do have some freedoms with that, but it is. Like the live show, we record every Sunday night, and so it's a couple of hours of producing it, recording it, being there on StreamYard, doing the video side of things, and then late into the evening editing that and putting it up for the audio version. So that's the fast turnaround, but I'm a late nighter, and when this is your only gig now and you get to sleep in and enjoy sleeping in, I just stay up late and I do it and sleep late the next day.
There you go.
It works for me, I guess.
Yeah.
That's so nice. Because, like, yeah, I don't think I could. Like, I'm a night owl, but I'm not productive at night. So, like, my productivity, like, my work is like mid-morning to early afternoon. So, like, if I have to work late, it's a slog. So, like, I couldn't do that.
See, I'm the opposite, and
Nice.
that's why retirement works better for me. How many years 21 years that I taught not being my best and most productive during the first part of the day. And then I wake up in the evenings and I'm like,
Mm-hmm. I will say I'm also productive late afternoon if I've gotten a nap in.
Yeah, Brian says, yeah, there's no way I could have met their needs.
Yeah.
they've been more flexible on those needs though, Brian. I think that once they understood more, kind of, they were kind of new to the podcasting space. And so learning how to, it's a new podcasting network. It's a podcasting network for this company. And so it's been a growth for them too. And we've done it together. And so it's not been as, I was worried about that too, but was willing to, take that challenge to try to do it. And it's been cool.
Brian says, that's great. Super happy. It's more flexible than originally expected and a great purpose behind the shows.
Hey.
So you handle, you participate in not just the editing and post-production, but actually in the production of the shows?
So it's changed a bit. When I first started the first couple of months this last summer, it was interesting. I still don't get it, but they had a backlog of unproduced episodes. So interviews, just raw audio from a couple of different shows going back like a year in some situations. And they just didn't have an editor. And so what I did for 2 or 3 months was just edit at whatever speed I could, edit a whole bunch of podcasts, which was good experience before we jumped into a regular schedule. So none of, there wasn't any live or pre-recorded anything yet for me. And then as we got into a schedule and picked up doing them live again or pre-recording, for the most part at the beginning, I was just there for the recording and making sure everything sounded as good as possible, being kind of the contact for the guest and emailing and giving them a StreamYard link or a Riverside link, giving them recommendations, kind of instructions. And then the live show is quickly turning into more of a traditional kind of producer, prepare, fill the host in on what they need. It's getting to be a little more of a traditional, I guess, broadcasting producer role, light version of that. So that's been interesting. And so we've been, the team has been talking about, what does that need to look like? And, what does the pre-interview, what do we need from the pre-interview so that our hosts no longer will have to do that, do the whole, it's a big company and they, with budgets. And so we don't need to be doing like we're just hobby podcasting at the last minute cramming stuff. It's like we can do this and be more of a production and a network. And so we're streamlining who's going to do this, who's going to do that. So yeah, I'm gaining every couple of weeks. I feel like I gain a few things that fall on my duties. Which
Has
okay.
scope creep been an issue in that regard?
Has what creep?
Scope creep. So whenever
Okay,
you first
explain
come to terms, agree with how much you're going to be paid versus for what work you're doing, then a client might be, hey, can you also do this, do this, do this? To one of my early clients, Zach, before I was charging way too little back then. And so I was doing just editing his show, and then he wanted to add in video, and then he wanted me to start doing the show notes, but I never charged him more because it's just here's one little thing that at the time, not a big deal to add onto my plate. But then as you start adding more and more, now you've doing like way more than you're getting paid for.
I'm remembering now you all talking about scope creep. For me, it doesn't apply because I'm hourly.
Oh, perfect. That's one way to solve that.
Yeah.
So what have you learned through this process? The more you learn, the more you realize what you don't know. But what are some of the things you're picking up on?
I jotted down a few things like that. One of the things was we already talked about was learning to do what I do kind of on the clock. And because it's hourly, right? That's I guess one of the main reasons why it's important for me to do what I was doing better and faster. Other things are like working with a team, obviously. I don't make every decision necessarily myself. And so there's this collaborating thing or waiting for a response or, you might get and it's different than like a client, right? I might get hey, can you take another look at this and maybe edit this or blah, 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 blah. Right. So that kind of thing, collaborating. But also I've learned that sometimes I overprocess things and somebody might not necessarily contact me on my own show and say, this seems a little too processed or too, compressed or, the S's are too harsh or, just whatever, sibilants or whatever it is. As I've learned RX, I got really excited, right? Oh, look at all these tools I have to me now that I'm, and so I've learned that there's a side effect to processing too much, and that is degrading the audio quality, right? And so that combined with me trying to get faster, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, okay, I've got to hurry. I'm on the clock. I can't take 4 hours to do this. I'm learning to do it faster, right? And there have been a few times where it's like, I should have gone with my instincts and reprocessed this before I started editing. But then after you process it and then you start editing and you're 2 hours into editing, the last thing you want to do is, start having second thoughts and go back and start all over. And so when in doubt, I actually process less now. And I always pull the slider down a little bit on each thing. That's been a more recent kind of lesson that I've learned.
I think like that's kind of part of the downfall because I have a similar workflow to you into where like I start in RX, I do a lot of my processing there, and then I bring it into my DAW to do all the editing and whatnot. And I'll do a little, more tweaking there. But then I find like if I did something in RX like too harsh or like I messed it up, you kind of already processed the audio. But what you can do is like go back in RX, redo it, and just overwrite the file that you're looking at in your DAW. Does that make sense?
Dude, send me the instructions on how to do that. What?
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, with non-destructive editors. Because I use Reaper, so I don't know exactly how to do it, but like...
It's the same thing.
Yeah. So you export the audio from RX somewhere, bring it into Audition.
Please hold writing down this note.
Yeah, it works for Audition too.
Cool.
Yeah. So then as long as you either keep the project open in RX or actually save the RX project, it'll keep like your entire processes, and then you can just like undo and then like redo whatever you messed up and just overwrite that same file, the same name. So whenever Audition goes to check that file, I'm assuming it works the same way. Now it's looking at the newly processed file. And that way you don't have to go back and fix all your edits from before and like redo everything.
Stop it. Neat.
Yep.
So I'll be hooking up with Jennifer later so she can show me how to do that.
I need to do that a video on that and for Reaper.
Yeah,
We'll
you're
have
just
to-
renaming the file that just save the new file with the same name as the old file, and then poof. It's like when
Oh,
you're
cool.
uploading to your media host and you don't want to lose your downloads with the new file, you have to name it the exact
Right.
same thing. Yeah,
Right.
same type of thing.
Okay. Cool. But yeah, before I started doing this, it wasn't a problem because I did everything with plugins.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you're an hour into editing something and you realize there's an issue, you can just adjust the plugin. And so it would be cool if you immediately noticed a problem at the beginning when you're editing, but you don't always notice it right when you start.
Right.
And Alejandro is popping in with the hi guys. For those that don't know, Alejandro is the person who edits this show because even though we're podcast editors, we don't like to edit ourselves.
Nope.
And he does a fantastic job. So if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, which will be dropping a week after the live stream, you have Alejandro to thank for the quality of it.
Thanks, Alejandro.
So another trick, does RX or does Audition have RX Connect or anything like that?
I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is.
So I think RX Connect it's like a plugin, but you can it connects like your DAW to the standalone RX. Reaper doesn't have that direct thing, but basically what I can do in Reaper is click on the file I want to process more, and then it'll open that file in RX. I can do more processing and then save it in RX, and it'll update automatically in Reaper. Very similar to what I kind of mentioned before, but a little more. There we go.
Brian figured it out.
Yeah, Brian has dropped a link in chat, and we'll be sure to put that in the show notes as well on how to use RX Connect in Adobe Audition. But basically, it just connects RX to your DAW, so you can kind of work on them simultaneously. Very cool stuff.
See,
Nice.
y'all, come be a guest on Podcast Editors Mastermind so that you can get professional development and learn to fix what you're doing wrong.
On that one, I do have a video on how to do that in Reaper. I actually done that. So, is the network you're working for now, is that your first professional client that's not your own show?
Yes. Other than, over the years, I have helped a few people get shows off the ground. Showing them how to use Audition, or I'm sure I have edited a few things here and there. I've created a few intros for people, that kind of thing. But yeah, as far as professional editing, this is it. This is the totality of my experience outside of my own show, which I've been doing for about 10 years.
Do you want to do more?
I've been thinking about that. I think I would be open to it, but I'm so used to this process now and this whole hourly thing that I don't know if I would do it the same way, just do an hourly type thing. I think in the right situation, I would. It's not like I would be looking to start that business. If I found the right person who needed my help and wanted to pay me, I'd look into that, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Are you recruiting there, Jennifer?
I'm just asking. Always finding out,
Gotta keep those angels out there. So do you consider yourself is this something you just kind of do as part of as an individual, or do you consider yourself like a business or?
I think that I am liking this contractor world. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I, as someone who does not have a business background, I'm liking what I'm doing, and I don't have the whole stress out about a business thing.
Yeah.
I also am not in a situation where I absolutely have to have the work. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm getting
Yeah.
a pension. It's not the largest pension in the world, but I'm getting a pension, and this is just to kind of help me, right? So does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if I can manage to keep doing this and stay in this kind of contractor world, I think that probably suits me.
I love that.
And I don't know, how much I'm getting paid compared to other models, business models or whatever. I'm sure I'm working way too hard, but like I don't necessarily, and I don't leave the house much. I've always said I'm a recluse in training. So this is my activity, and then I go watch TV a little bit. I don't have kids, and
You're enjoying your life right now?
I'm enjoying life. I'm enjoying staying up late and sleeping in. And
Yeah.
I do a few piano lessons on the side too, so I have
Nice.
have that to keep me busy a little bit.
Yeah, I love the life that like this profession, whatever you want to call it, like lets me have, because like I'll stay up super late playing video games whenever I want to, and like sleep in the morning and then do my work whenever I want to, and just it's a very enjoyable life.
Yeah, there's I don't mean to get fluffy, but there's I miss a lot of things about being a teacher in education. In the last, even before COVID, things in education have changed, and it's gotten harder and more stressful, not in a good way. And educators are leaving the field in droves. And I was just fortunate to be far enough along, at least in my state, where I could afford, and I had a 403B, which is like a 401k for public workers. And so that was one of the smartest things I ever did, was have that, because that allowed me to buy the years. And it was my body already. Like sometimes some teachers have to wake up at 4:30 or 5:30. And when you're not a morning person, and you can't just, calling in sick is a little different when you're a teacher, and you have to spend 4 hours doing subplans or but I guess what I'm going to, the stress and the mental health situation was not good. And so it was kind of a put the mask on yourself first kind of situation, and take care of myself. Now I have unintended side effects of, now I'm not getting as much activity. When you sit down and work more,
Yep.
when you're not working with middle school kids up and about and everything, I had to remind myself more to get up and
Yeah.
go get some exercise, or touch the grass, sit on the deck, take a walk. And I'm not doing a very good job with that right now. But mental health, much better. I'm like a completely different person. So like you're saying, yes, this is the perfect world for me right now.
That's amazing.
And I just wish everybody was in a position where they could figure out how to make that work, because I know not everybody can. I'm very fortunate.
Do you see a possibility of like mixing the two, as far as like doing some sort of podcasting class, like teaching in school districts?
Actually did for a number of years.
Okay.
So I have always taught vocal music for half the day for all 21 years that I taught. Half the day I taught vocal music, choir. And for like the first 12 years, I taught piano keyboarding for the other half of the day. And then for like at least 8 years, the last 8 years that I taught, I helped to me and another colleague put together and produced a music production course for middle school. And at the time, it was one of the only, there aren't a lot of middle schools for sure that have a program like that or a lab. And our district is, we have 5 middle schools in our district. It's a large district. So it needed to be a program that could be in all 5 middle schools. It took us a couple of years to put it together. And we took some, a couple of us went to some field trips on different college campuses or different high schools that had similar things. And at that time, I was just getting started podcasting, or had been a year into it, and I was totally geeking out. And I was like, "We are going to have podcasting in this music production course." So for at least 1 or 2 classes a day, once a quarter, for like a week or two, I did a podcasting unit.
Nice.
And so, 4 times a year, got to teach this podcasting unit for a couple of classes. Loved it. And I like to think I got some, young Gen Z or whatever Gen at the time, interested in podcasting.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Because there's somebody else, like another podcast editor in the community, who does something similar. Like she teaches in school, like teaches podcasting in schools. I think that's just the coolest thing. Some of the things like I'd love to do, but I have no idea how to get started. And that's kind of where the ambition
And
dies.
that was that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah, I remember
Don't know how to get started.
my husband a couple of years ago, or I guess several years ago, that was one thing. He was like, "Well, you should look into like one of the community colleges, pitch doing something like that." And I never did, but that would have been, I guess there's too many elements involved, having a lab and what's the technology like and who's it for. And, but yeah, that's the other thing. Like I did not expect in my life as a music educator that 10 years ago, I would also be teaching computer skills, because that's really what I did a lot of the time, right? Was computer skills. And at that time, 10 years ago, and now for sure, middle school kids will come in the room and some of them will look at a mouse and be like, "Excuse me, what?"
Oh,
And
wow.
because everything now is touchscreen or
yeah.
on the phone. And, you also have kids in middle school that sometimes look at, we have our Cisco phones and, they're like looking at the receiver, like, I don't, like when they have to call home. And so I have to pick up you put this in, because a lot of them haven't seen those things. Right. So we
Right.
assume that our kids now are techie peeps. The younger generation is always up with the technology, except for when it's an old school computer or iMac. I was constantly teaching them how to grab the file and put it in a folder, or right clicking on something, or they were like, "What, Mr. Keller, you're so smart." I'm like, "No, I'm just old, and this is what we used when I was your age."
I saw something about that where it's like millennials and like Gen X are more tech savvy than Gen Z and younger, because like when we were growing up, things didn't just work. Like one thing is like, kids don't know about coding or anything. It's like, yeah, because like millennials like coded their MySpace pages, and it's like our computers like mess up all the time. We had to know how to go in and fix it. Whereas now, like with the advancements of technology, like your phones just work as expected. So you don't need to problem solve and like really get into kind of like technical aspect of it, because like things just work.
Mm-hmm.
I also saw this thing. It was like comparing like Gen Z to millennials, like make a hand motion to like call somebody. And so of course like millennials would do this, but Gen Z would do like this or something.
Well,
Wow.
and rolling a window down in a car.
Yep, that was another one.
You don't go,
Yeah. Or like
man.
what is this, like a save icon on a document or something? Like
yeah.
they just don't know what that icon is.
Well, another example of that is like my kids would use GarageBand, because it was a Mac lab for our music production class. And so I would tell them, just press stop. And they're like, what? Like, what?
Oh,
where's
yeah.
that? And like, I'm like, the stop button. And they have no idea that square is stop. They
Oh,
have
wow.
no idea, that the triangle is play
Play.
sometimes. Or how to go back, like the rewind button. And they're like, what? And I'm like, just hit the space bar. Okay, just hit the space bar.
All right, so this is the last question I got for you. Outside of podcasting, and I know you are into supernatural and all that fun stuff, but outside that and podcasting, what are some hobbies that you enjoy?
Hobbies. I love reading. I go in and out of reading though. Like I'll read a book every couple of weeks for like a couple of months, and then I'll be like, oh, I'm done reading, and then I'll listen to more podcasts, right? Or like right now I haven't read in a while because, and if my husband's listening to this, he will laugh. He's very concerned about me because I have been obsessively watching old game shows on the Buzzer network. Like check me in to a facility, obsessed.
Nice.
So if I'm not editing something right now or giving a piano lesson, I've got my phone in front of my face watching Concentration or Password or The Match Game.
That's great. That's great.
But yeah, I'm obsessively collecting books, and when I have to own the book that I read, so I love the Dead Tree versions of books.
Nice.
and have a shelving ceremony. Every time I finish the book, it goes on the shelf. That's probably
Nice.
that's currently my nerdy outside of paranormal hobbies.
I love it.
Well, you're familiar with our show, and you know that at this point of the show, we have traditionally gone to the Poddex question of the day, but we went through the Poddex and we're repeating questions. So now we have, powered by AI, the ChatGPT random question of the day.
Oh, so excited.
So here we go. If you could visit any place in the world, real or fictional, where would you go and why?
Any place in the world, real or fictional?
And if you are watching this live, feel free to leave your answer in the comments. Or if you are listening to this or watching this in the future, be sure to leave a comment wherever you can and let us know what your answer is.
I'm going to be really dorky and give you a answer you probably didn't expect. I would go into a fictional Goonies world. I want to
Wow.
go to, what is it, Astoria in Goonies, like in Oregon. But I want to go back to like 1984 Goonies. I want to break into that cave and see the giant ship
Aw.
and jump in the blue food coloring water and ride my bike, of course, and not be a fat old man, but ride my bike down, the hill to the cave on the
Yeah.
coast.
Aw. That's great.
For me,
about
I think
you?
if I had more time to think of it, I'd probably come up with something else. But like the first thought that came to mind was like, I've always wanted to spend a year in Alaska or even like somewhere like in Scandinavian countries or something. So I want to experience the Northern Lights, but I also want to experience like the 6 months of night, 6 months of day kind of thing. So I'd want to live like super north for a year to have that full experience.
That is interesting.
Why?
I don't know that I've heard anybody say they want to experience that.
I don't know.
But why?
It's just like it's something that I thought of for a very long time. Like I think it'd be cool to like spend like that 6 months in darkness. It'll
You don't
never
have any,
happen.
like winter depression mood things going on. That's in my family. There's a lot of that. So
Yeah.
I don't know that I could do that for a long period of time.
I don't At least I don't think so. I guess that's one way to find out
You
for sure.
find out.
Yeah. But I know it'll never happen because like my wife is staunchly opposed to that. So it'll forever be a dream.
My husband
Well,
and
my
I just
answer-
talked about Alaskan cruise,
Oh, I
actually.
want to do that.
Sorry, Jennifer.
No, I want to do an Alaskan cruise. But my answer, the first thing that popped in my head, because I saw a meme about it recently, but I'm going to stick with it, is the Shire from Lord of the Rings. Because it's so
Ooh.
green and friendly and happy and stuff. And green.
I don't know if
And
you're
green.
aware. Yeah, very green.
Very green.
That it still exists in New Zealand.
Well,
I've
I
heard
wanna-
that too.
Yeah. I want to go somewhere. Well, right now we're starting to get green here
Yes.
in Kentucky, so that's helpful.
Yeah.
It's happening quickly.
Yeah. It's so nice.
Yeah. But all right, Daniel.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Patrick. If people want to reach out to you or listen to your podcast, where can they go?
They can go to bigseance.com, which is my website. Patrick at bigseance.com. If something happens, they want to email me, I guess. That's it. It's been an honor. Thank you for having me as your community on. And I look forward next time to jumping in the chat room live. Now, I used to miss a lot of the lives. You said you were sad sometimes when I wasn't there. I used to miss because I used to have Thursday meetings every couple of weeks. And so sometimes I would cheat and like I would be on my phone just with the volume down in the
There you
meeting. But sometimes I just missed out completely and I was
Sure.
sad. So
Yeah. That's okay. We forgive you. But now that you're retired, you don't have any excuses, right?
I know, for real.
Well, Jennifer, if there's somebody else that wants to be highlighted on our community highlights, what can they do about that?
They can go to. I was reading the wrong thing. They can go to podcasteditormastermind.com and click Be a Guest. I wanted to keep talking about Patrick's big seance because it's the banner I'm looking at, but no. Go to podcasteditormastermind.com, click Be a Guest.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Patrick, for coming on, and thank everybody who is here live and anybody in the future who's going to be listening to the recording of this. And this has been an absolute pleasure, and I can't wait to do it again. So I'm hoping people take us up on this, or like we can find somebody else to highlight because it's so cool just being able to talk about like other people, other editors who are doing this. They've been
Love you, Brian. Love you, Carrie.
Yes. Well, thank you much. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I'm Daniel Abendroth, and you can find me at rothmedia.audio.
And I'm Jennifer Longworth. You can find me at bourbonbarrelpodcasting.com.
And as Patrick has shouted out, our other Yetis, Brian Ensminger, you can find at toptieraudio.com. And Carrie, is it Coppola or is it Eric? I don't want to mess that up. Okay. Well, and then our long distance Yeti, Carrie, you can find her at carrie.land.
Her Facebook says Caulfield, if that.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Carrie Caulfield. Thank you so much.